So we're back with part 3. We've set up our add to cart. Move a couple things around here, but it is complex. So maybe let's go through how this actually works again in real time. So I'm going to go back to my shop controller and I'm going to put a breakpoint in here on my line 48. And this time I'll run it with my debugger so we can see what happens. So I'm going to start debugging and we can step through what happens line by line when I add something to the cart. And then what happens when I add a second item to the cart. The process runs a little differently. Excuse me. So I'm going to get a new session here. I'm in a new browser. I think I'm going to get a new session. Usually each time we start the server, it'll destroy any session variables in memory anytime I stop and start my server. So I'll actually even try this in 2 browsers. So I'm going to click on Shop Now here in Firefox. I'll click on a category. And I'm going to put 1 copy of Dark Souls in my cart. So this is product ID 11. So let's look at what happens. When I click Add to Cart, my debugger takes me here. So I want product ID 11 with a quantity of 1. My query's already fetched the price from the database. So my customer ID is going to be null. So let's see what happens. It calls our method. And first it checks, do we already have a customer ID in the session? My code goes in here. So the answer is no. There's no session variable yet. So we initialize an empty string. We're then going to use the GUID class to generate a new identifier for me. So it starts with 322. And then it wants to write this value into a session variable called customer ID. So on line 80, we're creating a new session variable. And then we're going to return this session variable back to add to cart. So now when this line of code, when line 48 finishes, my new customer ID is this new GUID that starts with 322. Now I'm going to create my new cart object. So product ID 11, quantity of 1, price of 80, my new customer ID, and the current date and time. So it's going to add this object that has all these properties. You can see how helpful the runtime debugging is here. I can see exactly what's happening and all of the values I'm working with. So then I call save changes, and then it redirects. My debugging ends here. If I go back and look in my database now, here's my new cart record with customer ID 322, quantity of ID of 1. So it generated a new customer ID, put it in the session, saved it to the database. What happens if I add another item to the cart? So I'll go back. This time I'll get 3 copies of The Last of Us. Add to cart. So we call our method again, and now it's going to check our session variable. This time our session variable, it's not null. We've already set it when I put my first item in the cart. So notice it skips over the code where we generate a new customer ID. And it just again sends back the customer ID of 322 that we created when I put the first item in. Then I can just continue. And now if I look, I've got 2 items attached to this same ID. So each time we put an item in the cart, we're going to check that session variable. Do we already have one? If we don't, we're going to create a new identifier. If we've already got one, we're just going to use the identifier we've already created. So now I'll stop. my debugger because I can't make any more changes. So now we need to add the cart method and cart view. So I'm going to make a new method that'll get called after we add to cart. So this is going to be shop/cart. So we're going to make a new method called cart. It doesn't take any parameters. So the first thing we're going to do is again, we'll set up the customer ID variable because we now want to get the items that are attached to this customer. Actually, we'll just do it this way for now first, just to keep it simple. We'll have to modify this maybe next week. We'll call getString and read our customer ID session variable. Get customer ID from the session variable. Get items in this customer's cart. So we'll use our database connection and we'll use our cart DB set. So we added this after created the model. We added this today to our application DB context. .carts. And we want to use a where clause. We don't want to get everything in the carts table. We only want to get the items that belong to this customer. .where. So our customer ID is equal to our customer ID variable. And then we want to load the cart page and display the customer's items. So what would we need on line 97? We're identifying who the customer is from the session. We're querying the database. And then we want to show a page so the user can see their cart. So what do we need on line 97? How do we load a view and pass the list of items from their shopping cart? Thank you, Farouk. Again, we're going to return a view and pass in the cart items. Exactly. So our cart method's actually fairly simple. Right? Figure out who the user is from the session variable. Now, eventually we'll need to make a little change here because a user could come to the website before putting anything in their cart and just click the cart button right away. So we'll want to check for that. If that's the case, we probably don't want to do this, but we'll leave it for now. So now we want to create a view called cart, and we can use scaffolding to design most of the page for us. And then we can customize it a bit. So let's go to Solution Explorer, and under the Views and Shop, let's add a view. Again, go down to Views, Shop, right-click, Add a View. This time we don't want an empty view because we'll let Visual Studio scaffold most of the page for us. I'm going to pick a Razor View. So pick this second option for Razor View. and click the Add button. Our view name is going to be cart. Which template do we want here? Are we creating, deleting, showing details of one item, editing, or listing? You got it, Farouk. We want to show a list. And which model are we using? A list of what is being displayed on this page? You got it. We're showing a list based on our cart model. We'll make sure our layout page is selected and we'll click Add. So this will give us a functioning page that's going to display a list of cart items. We'll have to modify it a bit. So we'll let the scaffold run. And here's our page. The model is an IEnumerable of type cart. So let's see now if I put an item in my cart. I'll have to start my server again because I was debugging and I pressed stop. So that shuts my server down. So I'll go back. I'll put something new in my cart. I'll pick a category. I'll pick a game. I'll add to cart. So now right away, we get a customer ID generated in the database, and it shows me the items in my cart. If I go back and pick a new product, this time I'll try it from the product details, add to cart. Boom. So I've got 2 items in my cart. But our page needs some work. So the scaffolding, again, useful place to start, not the finished product. A whole bunch of changes are needed here. Okay, good question, Diana. We can't see it because the product is the parent. So if we want this, we're going to need to modify our query a little bit, right? Our scaffold is trying to show the product name, but we're going to have to modify our query a bit. So in here, I'm going to say dot in. Let's see, dot cards. Dot. Oops. I want to, in my query, I want to include we've got to include a reference to the parent object. So in here, so we need to add a reference, add the missing reference. So this way, when we're getting carts, we're including the parent object. So I'll add that reference and save. So I've modified my query on line 95. I'll see if that fixes things. I'm going to have to shop again every time my site builds, it wipes out that session variable, so I'm going to have to put something new in my cart, which is okay. We'll reload. Try again. So now when we modify the query, now our product name shows up. So make sure we include our query by default. It includes child objects, but it doesn't include parent objects. We need to manually, so we need to add a reference to the parent object. Product. So it's functional, but it's not finished. What do we do with this? How do we clean it up? A bunch of changes we need to make in this view. What do you see on this page? Put in the chat what you think we should modify. Yep, we don't want create new, for sure. What else? Yeah, we don't want to show the customer ID. We probably don't even want to show the date created. So we could get rid of these two columns. Maria, I'm going to ask you for one of our features because you mentioned it earlier in the class. What did you suggest that this page is going to need? Liam, do you mean like a keep shopping button? Yeah, like a continue shopping. Right, we also want to remove. So we want to change these, get rid of these links, but maybe just make this remove. We also want to format the price. We could probably show the photo thumbnail and even make the product. We probably want this to be the first column and it should be clickable so the user could go back to look at the product again. I purchased some stuff on the weekend. I had it in my cart. And just before I click checkout, I wanted to click on that product and make sure, yes, this was really the right thing I wanted. So let's clean this up a bit. So let's go to cart. We're definitely going to take out the create new link. Maybe I'll make the heading, the H1, and the page title say your cart. I'll add a little bit of formatting to my table, table striped and table hover. So I've modified line 4, line 8. Kind of do this one piece at a time. Most of this is just kind of HTML cleanup. At least for now. Oops, I restarted. So again, I'm going to have to add to cart. It's okay. I don't mind. Okay, so I want to move my product column over here. I want to get rid of customer ID and date created. I want to format the price. I want to get rid of edit and details. I also want to total up the prices and show the cart total down at the bottom, along with a keep shopping and a checkout button. So let's make these changes. So in my table, I'm going to get rid of the customer ID heading. I'm going to get rid of the date created heading. And I'm going to move this product heading to be my first column. Like so. I think I'll create one other empty heading here. So now my header row looks like this. Product, empty, quantity, price, empty. Here's my table header row. And then I'll clean up the code inside the individual rows. So again, customer ID, don't need it. Product name is now first. Date created, don't need it. Edit and details, don't need. Delete, we're going to change in a minute. I want another column here. It says if at item dot product dot photo isn't null, we want to show the thumbnail. And I'll use my image thumbnail class to show it at 70 pixels wide if we happen to have a photo. I also want to format the price as currency. So I'll just change this and use the same string.format method we used previously. String.format using Microsoft's bizarre formatting syntax, currency, and item price. So this is going to show me the product name, show me the image, format the price. I'm going to make a couple other quick changes here as well. My price column, I want to align it right with class equals text right. My prices, I want them to line up vertically and be right aligned so we can visually do the math to total up our columns. I also want to change the product name so that they become links to our product details page. So let's see what we'll do here. I'll add an ASP controller equals products, ASP action equals details, and ASP root ID equals at item dot product ID. So our link will display the product name, but if the user clicks it, it will load the product details method and pass in the ID. We'll check this. I can happy to scroll up or down, show you any piece of this. I'll put what's here so far. So this is our for each on down. We'll make a couple more changes. We're almost done. I think the remove from cart functionality, we'll write that next week. So in here, maybe I'll just change my ASP action to remove from cart. If we don't specify a controller, it looks for this method in our same controller. And that's fine because we'll write the remove from cart method next week in our shop controller. Not today. Let's see how this all looks now. I'll go back and put the item in my cart again. I don't really care that I'm filling up my cart table. Pick, add to cart. All right. Okay, my price label, I probably want to push over here, add a text right here as well. Oh, I need the @ symbol in front here. My thumbnail shows up. So that's okay. I'm going to right align all four of the quantity, price, both the heading and the values. And I forgot my @ symbol here. This takes me to the right place. but it doesn't show me the name properly. So I'll clean those things up. So I need an @ symbol in front of my product name. And I'm going to align the quantity, both the data rows, as well as the headings. I'm going to add a class of text right to both of these. Numeric values in a table, we probably want them right aligned. This should clean these items up. And the last thing we'll do before I call it a day is I'll just add a running total so we can display the total down here along with a keep shopping and a checkout link. Okay, so now everything looks right. We're right aligned. Our little JavaScript link takes us back. I can add something else to the cart. Cool, we're on the right track. So the last thing we're going to add are just a couple of buttons, as well as a display of the running total at the bottom of our table. So I'm going to add, outside of my loop, I'm going to add one more row. So let's add TD call span of 3, class equals text right. In here, we'll add ASP action of index. So go back to the main shop page. We'll style it as a button. It'll say keep shopping. In our next column, we're going to total up all the prices. And in our last column, we'll put a checkout button. We're not going to write the checkout today. We just want the button to appear. So this goes after our loop outside that closing curly brace. And now we just need to write a little bit of code that as our loop is going along, we'll create a total. We need a variable to keep track of the running total. So we want to multiply for every item, the quantity by the price, add it to the total, and then display that total down here. So we'll do that. It'll just take us another minute, and we're going to stop for today. So up here at the top, I'm going to declare a variable, double total, and I'll initialize it to 0. And inside of our loop, we're going to continually add to the total, and then we can display it in the footer. So declare a double called total, and in here, we're going to keep adding on to it. It's going to be equal to our item.price times our item.quantity. So this is going to calculate a running total. And then down in the bottom in that second column we put in our footer row, we can just display this as currency. Put the formula in the chat. And then down here, we can use string.format with our currency format one more time. And we're going to display the total down at the bottom as currency. Just going to try this out, and I think we're done for today. I'll push everything, but we'll have a quick look at it. So I've used string.format with my currency format to display the total. Try it one more time. So I'll put some stuff in my cart. So it shows me my cart total of 80. I can keep shopping and it brings me back here to shop again. So things are totaling as they should. So it's just kind of starting to look sort of look like a functioning e-commerce site. Not finished, but we're on the right track. Okay, it's calculating properly. We can look at the products. We can see the photos if they are. We'll have to deal with remove from cart and checkout. But we can do those things next week. We also should probably add a link right in the navigation for a user to go to the cart page. We don't have that right now. Simple enough for us to add in our layout file. Okay, we've done quite a bit this week. I'm going to push our code. One thing I want to do before next week is have everybody set up an account with the Stripe payment gateway. So I will email out some instructions so we don't have to spend time in class setting that up next week. If you can set it up before class next week. So this is cart display. So just a reminder, assignment 2, part 1, it's due on Sunday along with your quiz. We will not have a quiz after next week's class. Okay, are there any questions for today before we go?